Antoine Lavoisier, a French chemist who is a pioneer for the discovery of carbon cycle. Back in 1780s, Lavoisier conducted an experiment in a guinea pig in a jar. He measured the heat production from the respiration of the guinea pig. He realized that respiration involves a slow burn combustion. This experiment carried on to the theater of Paris, where he discovered that the oxygen in the upper part of the room decreases while the carbon dioxide increases. He wondered why the guinea pig in a jar died in an airtight environment while humans can survive the suffocating theater of Paris. In 1792, he proposed the theory that plants on a global scale contained the means nature uses to maintain the respirability of air. Carbon, the fourth most abundant element in the universe. This element is responsible for carbon cycle process. This process causes the Earth's temperature to rise. It involves both slow and quick carbon transfer between reservoirs, meaning it is the continuous movement of carbon between living organisms in the environment through the natural process.
The carbon cycle is a natural process by which carbon is exchanged between the atmosphere, the oceans, and the Earth's land masses. In carbon cycle process, the plants absorb carbon present from the atmosphere in order to perform photosynthesis, during which the plants produce fuel for the building of plant structures. When the animal ingests these plants, carbon is formed in their bodies. When these animals and plants die, carbon is released back into the atmosphere as they decompose. Meanwhile, the remains of the animals and plants that died can be buried in sediment and over time can become fossil fuels, such as coal, oil, and natural gas. These fossil fuels are then employed for man-made activities such as transportation and energy production that release additional carbon into the atmosphere. That's all for the carbon cycle process, and our next reporter between Ms. Maliksi.
Carbon cycle diagram.
Note that carbon atoms are incorporated into various molecules as they flow around the cycle. For example, photosynthesis in plants captures carbon atoms and sugar molecules, and as atmospheric carbon is contained in molecules such as carbon dioxide and methane.
Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy in the form of sugar.
On the other hand, it can be defined as the biochemical process of providing oxygen to the bodies of plants and animals. Some of these sediment might from fossil fuels such as coal, oil, or natural gas, which release carbon back into the atmosphere when the fuel is burned. In many ways, respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. In the natural environment, plants produce their own food to survive. Each year, 5.5 billion tons of carbon is released by burning fossil fuels. Of this massive amount, 3.3 billion tons stays in the atmosphere.
Hello, I'm Sherman Alison P. Reyes, and I'll be discussing about the carbon cycle on land. This includes its components and the members that can be found within it. Before we explain the carbon cycle, which can be found on land, we need to understand that the carbon dioxide is one of the most prevalent forms of carbon, which is 0.04% and can be found in the atmosphere. Furthermore, it can also be found through natural processes such as respiration and industrial processes such as the combustion of fossil fuels. How does it happen? It first starts when plants pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to the biosphere to turn it into food using the process known as photosynthesis. The carbon that becomes part of the plant is stored as starch, where it will be used for food. This is where the food chain comes into play. When an animal, this includes us humans, eats a plant, it digests the sugar molecules to get energy from their bodies. As a result, respiration, excretion, and decomposition releases the carbon back into the atmosphere or soil, thus forming this cycle.
Good day everyone, I am Armella Stibred, and now I'll be the one to tackle about oceanic carbon cycle. So it states in here that ocean stores a large amount of carbon and animals die and carbon substances are deposited at the bottom of the ocean. Additionally, oceans store carbon on ocean floor, which means that many animals pull carbon from water to use in shells, etc. When these animals die, the carbon substances are deposited at the bottom of the ocean. Therefore, I conclude that the oceans plays a particularly important role in the carbon cycle, and surface waters exchange gases with the atmosphere, absorbing and releasing carbon dioxide, oxygen, and other plant-like phytoplankton living in the ocean convert carbon dioxide into sugars that feed marine ecosystems. Take note that many organisms use carbon to make calcium carbonate, a building material of shells and skeletons. Other chemical processes create calcium carbonate into the water, and the using up of carbon by biological and chemical processes allows more carbon dioxide to enter the water from the atmosphere. Connecting to what I have said a while ago is like when marine animals die, their bodies may sink into the depths, or a smaller fraction settles to the seafloor where it is covered in sediment and locked away for centuries. Above all, such processes may eventually create coal or oil deposits deep underground. And that's all for my report. In the next one will be Miss Conde.
We will then tackle why the carbon cycle is important. So, we have several methods used to transport carbon from one storage reservoir to another. For instance, plants use photosynthesis to transfer carbon from the atmosphere into the biosphere as part of the food chain. They make sugar molecules by chemically combining carbon dioxide with oxygen and hydrogen from water using solar energy. Animals that consume plants break down the sugar molecules to provide their bodies with energy. The carbon cycle is continued through respiration, excretion, and decomposition, which release the carbon back into the atmosphere or soil. This is important because the Earth's temperature is regulated by its compounds, which also make up the food we eat and provide the energy that powers our global economy.